warmed up with this final ceremony. Carriage will be taken under the arch, and from there the transfer to the state hearse will take place. So many elements of strong tradition worked into the procession today. A piping party from the Royal Navy will pipe the still when the transfer is about to happen from the gun carriage to the hearse. A piping party that we heard at the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral last year. A very strong echo of the Duke of Edinburgh's life at sea, and of course from the Queen's point of view, a tribute to her late father, King George VI, and his experience during the First World War, the Battle of Jutland. It's a very challenging experience at sea, and of course the Duke of Edinburgh himself with his wartime service in the Second World War. Imperial state crown and the orb and sceptre will be part of the procession, and that royal standard which is draped over the Queen's coffin all the way to Windsor until that final committal takes place in St. George's Chapel. And when those emblems of Her Majesty's authority will be set on the altar at St. George's Chapel before the committal takes place. Under the arch they go. Her Majesty's coffin on that carriage to be sheltered under that arch. The transfer will take place. Moments that few of us will ever forget, I'm sure. National anthem played as Her late Majesty was taken from Wellington Arch and is now on the way to Windsor after a very moving service at the Abbey and some clearly expressed messages, including those of the Archbishop of Canterbury, about the Queen's life of service and dedication, a sense of duty, and then the magnificent, solemn, moving procession all the way from the Abbey to Wellington Arch. And there are crowds on the streets here approaching Knightsbridge, lots of them offering floral tributes, others just maintaining a dignified silence, come to see their Queen for the last time as she leaves London. Katie Nicholl and Robert Hardman are still with me here in the studio looking at these scenes and have been watching the procession and the service before that. Katie, as we see the Queen's final departure from the capital, I suspect that these are the images that will stay with people for many years to come.
I don't think anyone that watched that here will ever forget it. And you said during your commentary, so many memories, and that's what struck me as I watched that procession past those landmarks that have punctuated the Queen's life and punctuated ours, because we look forward to Trooping the Colour and those birthday parades. You know, I look at my life and it's been marked by the silver, the diamond, the gold, all these wonderful jubilees, and I can't help but think back to the Platinum Jubilee celebrations and the last time that the Queen stepped out on that balcony. And I think if anyone's wondering, what must she make of all of this? Remember when she stepped out for the last time, overwhelmed with emotion, that sea of faces, that sea of people there for her. Well, today they turned out again to bid a final farewell.
They did, Robert, and the sense of love and respect and admiration is just as strong as the sense of loss.
It is, Hugh. I thought it was rather touching. We saw just a few moments ago almost a ghost of a smile on the face of the King as he saw the end of this extraordinary ceremony, because it's been a spectacular and as we said earlier, unprecedented gathering of not just world leaders but of all these armed forces from around the world. This is a ceremony unlike anything, really, as you said earlier, since the funeral of George VI, possibly since the coronation, and it's all gone exactly as the Queen would have wanted. She paid a great deal of attention to all of this, and she would have been so pleased to see it just go the way it's gone. And I think the wonderful contrast between the solemnity and the formalities we had a little earlier, and now just look at the capital coming out. I mean, they are 20, 30, 40, 50 deep in places, the whole of Hyde Park, and now this is the sort of on her way to the other part of all of this, which will be, I think, rather more intimate.
Last night it was a glorious rainbow over London when we were preparing for today. And today it's a sunny day in September, and crowds really have come out in their many thousands. And the sunshine has added to the sense of colour and vibrancy. It's been solemn but not gloomy. This is the issue, because, as so many people have said, a life of 96 years is something to be celebrated. Of course, the Queen will be missed, but people understand that there's a lot here that needs to be said about everything that was achieved over that long lifetime. And that's really why I think that people have wanted to come out. It's a mark of thanks as well, not just of admiration. It's saying thank you as well as farewell.
It is you, and I suspect had it been pouring with rain, everyone that's standing out there today would still have done it in all weather.
It would be very British.
It would be terribly British, but I think the fact that as the coffin left the Abbey and the clouds parted and the sun came down, it was a wonderful moment to see that spectacle bathed in sunshine, and those rainbows that you point out, I think, struck so many people. The double rainbow over Buckingham Palace, the rainbow over Windsor Castle. I think we'll all be looking out for a rainbow later on today.
Indeed we will. And as you were saying, Robert, we're in a position where we are reflecting what's gone on today, but of course we're also looking ahead to the final part of this state funeral. And these people are clearly out to say goodbye and thank you for all you've done.
They are, and here we see Her late Majesty coming past the memorial to Prince Albert, that extraordinary memorial, 150 years old this year, the Albert Memorial, which Queen Victoria spent so much love on. I mean, it makes you think, what on earth are we going to put up to commemorate this extraordinary monarch who is leaving the capital for the last time? But everything about today, there was a sort of timelessness to it. I thought you saw the troops massing in front of Wellington's old house at Hyde Park Corner. It could have been the 19th century. I mean, and yet we have all these sort of modern aspects to it. It's been a brilliant blend of ancient and modern today, and there is 21st century Britain saluting really one of the greats.
It's a wonderful parallel, isn't it, to be passing the Royal Albert Hall, because of course all those years that the Queen was determined to attend the Festival of Remembrance on Remembrance Weekend, the eve of the Remembrance service at the Cenotaph, the buzz among 5,000 people in that hall when she arrived at just before 7 o'clock on Saturday evening was remarkable, with people really feeling that the Queen's authority and the Queen's blessing on what was happening was indispensable. It wasn't the same event, and isn't the same event, won't be the same event without her, although of course the King will, and already has impressed lots of people with the way that he's
everyone wanted an imprimatur on these events, and wasn't it wonderful the way the procession took in almost all the great memorials, all the way through, not just the Cenotaph and the Women at War, but up to Hyde Park Corner. There's the New Zealand War Memorial, the Australian War Memorial. I mean, every aspect of shared sacrifice, I think, has been recognised today through this exemplary procession.
I was really struck as well, Katie, by the way in which the procession, the initial procession, which arrived at the Abbey in silence, a sense of expectation, deep respect. The service itself really did underline lots of the themes that Her Majesty wanted to have underlined. She was, of course, a woman of strong faith.
She was.
It had informed lots of the decisions that she'd made in her life and the way that she'd lived her life.
I think you're absolutely right, and we saw the faith reflected in that service with some of her favourite hymns,
Yes.
readings that date back to the coronation. There was everything had been so carefully considered and thought out, and punctuated with the most important things in her life: her faith, the armed forces, her family, her people. It's all there, and I think also that sense that yes, we have lost something very, very special to all of us. This is a testimony to that. But in all of this, as Robert says, the tradition and the history and the landmarks and everything that's wrapped into this is the promise of the new. It's the continuity. We've seen that in the past 11 days, extraordinary days, and how the new king has been welcomed. But we saw that in the procession with Prince George and Princess Charlotte. That promise of the future, that promise of what's next to come. And I think that's reassuring, particularly at the moment
Yes.
The presence of Princess Charlotte there, a reminder of some of the extraordinary changes that the late Queen made during her reign. I mean, it was only in 2011 she changed hundreds, thousands of years of male primogeniture, so that, you know, the line of succession has changed. All these little, that's so much. I mean, when historians look back on this reign, they'll see so many small ways in which, very quietly but very firmly, she completely transformed this institution. And I also love the way today that the procession, it wasn't just about recognising her. I mean, obviously, clearly it was, but in her way, when she organised it, she wanted to recognise others. I thought the way in which she placed the Victoria Cross and the George Cross holders right at the front of that procession, for example, that was so her. You know, the George Cross, the great decoration invented by her father at the height of the war. You know, all these little things. There's a lot of nods, I think, to her parents in that.
And to the Commonwealth, the Mounties. I mean, it was all there, down to the NHS workers and everyone that helped us through the pandemic.
Most recent recipients of the George Cross, of course, the NHS.
A last word then from us before we go to our colleagues at Windsor for the next phase of the day. And Katie, you first of all. It's impossible to start really assessing neatly and credibly this remarkable reign so early on. Distinguished authors both, it's a challenge to do something like that. Do you feel that today will have helped people maybe turn the page, to just realise that great change is happening?
Yes.
And that they can take that on board? Is today the day when people will be helped in that direction?
I think so. I think this is the moment that completes 11 extraordinary days, and you could plan and rehearse and dress rehearse and do it all over again. You couldn't predict how the public were going to respond, what the mood would be. It's been phenomenal, but this is closure today, and I think back to what the Queen said in her very first broadcast when she was a little girl during the Blitz. All will be well, because it will.
Robert, is today the day when that happens? Because it's been 10 days of people really trying to come to terms with such a momentous change in public life and in personal lives.
I think what we've seen today, we have seen the embodiment of greatness from all the world leaders gathered to what we're seeing now, an entire nation coming out. This is greatness in our time, and that greatness is really down to this extraordinary monarch, her life shaped by three people in particular: her father, her darling father, her beloved mother, and of course her beloved Philip. And I just think it is so powerful that here she is, she's on her way, and after all this grandeur and greatness, tonight she'll be reunited with them for eternity.
Well, we are looking at the progress of the procession of the State Hearse to Windsor, to the royal town of Windsor, where the final committal will take place a little later this afternoon, and our coverage continues. We will be following the journey, Queen's last journey out of London, to her home at Windsor Castle, and then we'll be following the new procession that will take place at Windsor, and of course the service at St George's Chapel. And as we look at the vehicles making their way, and the State Hearse in particular, we can see the bright colours of the Royal Standard and the crown and the orb and sceptre, telling everyone along the way that this is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, a Christian of conviction, who more than anyone understood the message of the preacher, which is that there is a time and season to all things, a time to be born and a time to die. Queen understood that as part of the natural rhythm of life and the natural transition of the great constitution that she's upheld over many, many years. She's returning home to Windsor. Let's join Kirsty Young.
Yes, and so the grand and exquisite ceremonial tableau of that magnificent state occasion gently recedes into the background as the Queen's coffin makes its way now through London and out towards Windsor. Welcome to the splendour of Windsor Castle, the near 1,000-year-old home of royalty and the backdrop to many great battles and grand banquets. But today, sees maybe its most momentous event, the burial of our longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen will this afternoon finally be laid to rest in St George's Chapel alongside her beloved parents, sister and husband. So many days of grand public ceremony will come to an intimate ending as Her Majesty passes into history. We'll see the Queen's coffin making its journey towards Windsor and the committal service, which will be attended by the King, the rest of the royal family, and also Her Majesty's closest friends. Windsor Castle is certainly exquisitely grand and imposing, but it's also a place where the Queen, and then of course the little princess, played as a toddler on the lawn, found safety as a teenager during the Blitz, rode her ponies, nursed her children, walked her dogs. Having left her cherished home in the Scottish Highlands 11 days ago, today she will come to rest for eternity in the home that was so important it gave name to her family. Well, the town of Windsor is, of course, a major tourist destination. It's used to crowds, but today its streets have taken on a unique character. The grounds of the chapel and the edges of the long walk are carpeted with bouquets of flowers. And the thousands of visitors, some local and many more from far-flung corners of the globe, are quietly positioning themselves to take one last look at Her Majesty's coffin. David Dimbleby will be taking us through this afternoon's event.
I suppose the way to see this afternoon's service is that if what happened at Westminster Abbey was the grandeur of a state funeral with heads of state, with people from all over the world coming to pay tribute to Her late Majesty, what is going to happen here at Windsor this afternoon is much closer to a family funeral. As Kirsty was saying, the Queen is going to be interred here along with the Queen Mother, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, Princess Margaret, and will lie with 10 other sovereigns going way back to Henry VI in 1471. So it is in that sense the sovereign coming back to the place where our sovereigns, or many of our sovereigns, lie. But on the other hand, the congregation is going to be very different here, as the people sitting here now, perfectly obvious, were not in Westminster Abbey. They've assembled here, and they are a different kind of congregation, much smaller. They include, for instance, many of the Queen's godchildren. They include large numbers of people who worked on the Queen's estates, whether in Scotland or in Norfolk or in London. Some of them wearing, you see that little medal, the Royal Victorian Order, which several people here are wearing, and that's the order that's in the personal gift of the Queen, only given to people who have worked for her, and it's her decision whether they should have it. So what we'll see here is a quite different service, but with